Hello, everybody. Sunday Adelaja here. Welcome to another day of our program. We are doing this series on high yielding life. High yielding life. So the building block that we are going to be talking about today is the building block of obedience. Obedience to the spirit, to the leading of God in your heart. Obedience to the voice of God. Obedience to your heavenly vision. Yesterday we spoke about vision. That is one of the keys for you to live a high yielding life. Another key to living a high yielding life is for you to follow, to follow the truth that you know, to follow the truth that you have discovered, to follow the leading of God in your life. So, a high yielding life is also supernatural. A high yielding life is as a result of doing the right thing at the right time. That is having to do with obedience. Doing the right thing, those are the things that you have discovered. It doesn't have to be religious. Doesn't have to be religious stuff. But when you read any book and you discover any knowledge, or you even go to school, or you get some education, you get some understanding, be obedient to the principles that you are learning there. Be obedient to your parents. Be obedient to your teachers. Be obedient to the truth, to the principles of life. Life is based on laws. Life is based on laws and principles. And anybody that violates those laws is not violating the laws, really. He's violating himself. You cannot effectively break the laws of God and the laws of nature. You can only succeed in breaking yourself. So obedience is important. Obedience to the laws of God, obedience to your conscience, obedience to the instructions by the people who have gone before you. Obedience helps you to avoid the mistakes of others. It makes you to avoid the mistakes that others have made. You don't have to repeat the mistakes that many people have made. That's why instructions have been given. That's why commandments and wisdom have been written down so that we don't repeat the mistakes of others. Thousands of years, people have lived, millions and billions of people have lived before us, and they have been able to put down in different forms the knowledge that they had gained, and those knowledge becomes wisdom for us. So when we obey those instructions from our elders and from our parents, we actually we are saved from repeating a lot of these mistakes that ages that people have discovered that are not good for you or that will help you. So the ability to be obedient to your own self, also to be obedient to your own conscience, to your own decisions. When you obey your decisions, when you obey the things that you promise yourself, when you say integrity is the ability for you to be able to lower the gap between what you promise yourself and your gap of doing it, your pace, the difference between, because some people might promise themselves 10 things and they only do one of it. But when the ability to not widen the difference, but to close the difference between your promises to yourself and how much of it you are able to do, that is integrity. It's not what the promise you make to other people, but the promise you make to yourself. So let's say you make 10 promises to yourself in a week or in a day, and if you are able to do just one of them, that's lack of integrity. But if you are able to do 9 of them, that is integrity. It is your ability to be able to obey the promises you make to yourself. So that is also part of obedience. Obey your own commitments, obey your own words, obey your own decisions, obey your own obey your own promises that you made to yourself. So obedience is important in life. Obedience is important, and a lot of people that you see in prison today, they get to that place of incarceration because they will not obey their simple instructions that their parents gave them from childhood. Some of them will not obey the instruction that they were given in schools. Some of them will not even obey the instructions they discovered by themselves in the books or through life. But the ability to obey, the ability to follow instructions, the ability to do the right thing that you know is the right thing, to obey even your own personal commitment, the ability to just be in obedience is a major key to being a high yielding person in life. For example, if you promise to go, you just discover something that this will help you to make money, and you say, okay, I'm going to do it, and then you don't go to do it, you will never make that money. If you are supposed to do to go somewhere, you promise some people to go and sign a contract, and you said, I'm coming, and you don't come, you will never be able to make a headway in life. Nobody will respect you. So obeying yourself, obeying your own words, obeying the promises you give to others, following through in your decisions, following through in your commitment to people and to yourself. You see, when you look at the Bible, what I discovered, even when I was not a Christian, even when I was not a believer, when I was just an ordinary schoolboy reading but the Bible as Bible studies in the school, what I discovered is that the greatest problem that God had with the children of Israel is the question of obedience. The children of Israel were always doing the opposite of what God tells them to do, or what God says they should not do is what they do. So it is obedience. It's always the challenge of obedience. One of the greatest lessons you will ever see in the Bible is that obedience destroys people. Obedience breaks relationship. Obedience brings all the woes and the problems and the crises and all kind of evil into your life when you don't learn to obey. So the ability to obey instructions, the ability to follow leaders, to follow authority, to obey authority, especially to obey God. Even Jesus said it and said that by this shall people know that you are my disciples, when you obey my commandments, when you obey. So obedience, I mean, everything is based on obedience. If you buy iPad or a device right now, there are instructions there. If you obey the instructions, it says, for example, don't put this iPad on fire. Don't charge it by putting it on fire. If you put it on fire, you destroy it. That's disobedience. You destroy it. If you put your iPad or your computer, they say don't put it on on yourself or for too long. If you do disobey and you do that, it is going to harm you. Obedience. Life is about obedience. If you go to a city right now, and in that city, you said you disregard the signs. You just drive anyhow you want, and even though it's written, the sign is 60 kilometers per hour, and you said, oh, I don't care for that, you disobey, you end up in jail, or you end up losing your license to drive. Life is about obedience, everything. If you go to another town and you say, oh, I don't care for the instructions, and you don't know where you're going, how will you know where you're going when you don't follow the street guide and the street instructions that says go to that street, go to that street? When you follow, when you obey, then you'll be able to go to where you're going. If you don't like to obey, you will not obey the instructions even of the street signs that are there, you will never go and get to this instruction of where you're going. The reason why we have street signs that this is the street, this is this street, this is that street, this is the number here, this is the number here, follow that street for you to get to that place, you need to go. This is all about instructions, it's all about obedience. Laws work in societies because of obedience, because citizens have learned to obey. When I first came from Africa to Europe, this was a difficult thing for me to do because we were not used to obeying instructions, especially when it comes to the society. In Africa, in Nigeria, where I came from, you could obey instructions when it comes to your parents, when it comes to the Bible, but when it comes to society, we are not used to it because we came from a country of disorderliness. I mean, for you to just stand and just be reading instructions in the street, most of the streets don't even have instructions, and that's why we have chaos. That's why we have things falling apart. That's why things don't work, because where there are no instructions to obey, things will not work, and where there are no people who adhere to obedience, who obey, things will also not work for them. Because if life is based on instructions and obedience. So everything is based on obedience. If you go to a country, no matter what country you go to, you will find out that they have rules they have instructions, they have order, and it is according to how much you are able to obey those instructions that your life will be at peace, that you will live in peace and in serenity. But if you just want to live anyhow, that's why they have prisons. That's why they have incarceration centers. They will put you in jail because you are not obeying instructions. And this system of obeying instructions starts with the family, starts with the home. That's why parents must be particular about teaching their children to obey instructions. But even the highest level of instruction you could obey is the instruction and the promises that you give to yourself. You need to practice obedience in that sense. I mean, for you to go to work, you've got to resume at work at a certain time. That is obedience. For you to even go and eat, you get to the restaurant, they will tell you stand there, or go and take a tray, or go and write or do. Life is about obedience, and this is what some people don't like. A lot of people hate obedience. A lot of people hate listening to instructions and listening to other people telling them other things. Then you cannot live in a civilized society. You can never live in a civilized society if you don't learn obedience. And that's what Jesus was trying to say to us one time when he said that for you to be trusted with anything in life, for you to be given your own thing or to be trusted with anything, you need to be faithful in another man's business first. You need to learn to obedience by serving another person, and then you will be trusted with your own. And also for you to be given something, for you to be trusted with something big, you need to be obedient. You need to have been faithful in something small. It is by you obeying and being faithful, being in obedience in small things, that will raise your profile and make you to be to be the master or the over bigger things. So you can never be a master over big things when you have not been obedient in small things. And you can never be a master over your own thing, and you cannot be the lord or the director or the owner of your stuff if you have not been faithful or been obedient in other people's services and other people's jobs and other people's businesses. That's what life is all about. Life is about obedience. And the same thing, if you have not been faithful in the things of the world, that are perishable, you will never be faithful in the things of God. So it is all about law. Life is about law. So when we talk about high-yielding lifestyle, high-yielding, what makes our life high-yielding? One of the things that make our life high-yielding is our ability to obey immediately. There are some people who will say, there are different kind of obedience. There are some people who will say they obey, but they don't obey fast enough. So that's a different disobedience. It's a different kind of obedience. For example, if I say, please go and bring me this book, go and help me take this book to to somebody out there, and you said, okay, I will do it, and then you the first hour you didn't come to do it, second hour you didn't do it, third hour you didn't do it, second day you didn't do it, third day you didn't do it, and then you only came to do it for a week later. It's too late. The person I wanted you to give the book to is gone. The person is left. It's too late. That obedience is irrelevant. So obedience also is not just to say, oh, I obey, or I did it. There are different kinds of obedience. So there is the immediate obedience. When we talk about obedience, your reaction matters. The kind of obedience that is valued by everybody, practically in every nation, and the kind of obedience that will make you to be a high-yielding person is the obedience that you do immediately. Like, for example, I know a lot of people, even me, myself, and a lot of people out there, they don't do things immediately. They get the idea from God or from nature or from their spirit. They don't obey immediately. They don't have immediate obedience. And so And other times they just realize that somebody else has done what they had the instruction to do, or what they had the idea to do. When you get your ideas and you don't implement them on time, you will see that other people have implemented them and you are too late, because any instruction that God is giving you might have a time span, or it might be duplicated, it might be given to several people at the same time. Because God says, once have I spoken, twice have I heard. So whatever God speaks to you, He resonates to other people. Other people might have heard the same instruction. So if you will not obey the instruction, if you will not do it fast enough, other people will go ahead and do it. So that is what I'm saying. But immediate obedience is very, very key when it comes to being a high-yielding person. People who are high-yielding in this life, they are people who have mastered the act of obedience, and they have mastered it to the extent of obeying instantly, or obeying in 5 seconds. Whatever comes to their idea, whatever idea comes to their mind, they pursue it, they try to do it immediately, they go for it, they don't waste time. So that is who the person you want to become like. When you know that this thing is right, this thing is correct, is the right thing to do, go for it. Don't put things for later. Don't try to do things tomorrow what you can do today. Focus on what you have to do. Focus on the truth. Focus on obedience. Focus on kicking yourself from where you're sitting. Don't be too relaxed and saying, I will do tomorrow. That is called procrastination. Do what you need to do today. Make hay while the sun shines. So that is one form of obedience that a lot of people neglect. They think that, it doesn't matter, I will do it anyway, I will do it one time. But it could be too late. So there are different kinds of obedience. So for you to now come and say, but I did it, but you did it at the time when nobody needs it. You did it when it's already too late. So those, like for example, ideas like Facebook, maybe there was somebody who had the idea before even the person before Mark Zuckerberg, but because he didn't do it on time, it's too late. And now he's lost the battle. It's just because he didn't do it on time. So there are different kinds of obedience. Learn to be obedient to the divine instruction, or to the leading of the Spirit in your heart. Learn to be obedient to the decisions that you take, to the leading, to the ideas that come to you. So one of the kind of one part of this obedience that I'm talking about is to be obedient, fast and quick obedience. But there's another kind of obedience that will also help you in your relationship with your superiors, or with your seniors, or with your parents, or with people who you are a subordinate to, or who you are in subordination to. And this kind of obedience is to obey gladly. The ability to be able to not just do the thing that you are told to do, not just to obey the instructions, but to obey the instruction quick enough, to be quick and fast in obeying the instruction. The same thing with God. Even when you want to serve God, and you are dragging your feet and say, okay, I'm doing it, and you are not happy about it. God says anything you want to do, you should do it with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. So if you are not doing it with all your heart and your soul, I don't think it's going to be accepted by God. Even God said to love Him, loving God. You don't just say, I love God anyhow, I am obeying Him. No, He said to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. God wants your commitment. Be happy about it. Show joy, show enthusiasm, show involvement that, yes, if you have now decided to obey, to do this thing, do it in a way that the person that you are serving or you are helping is happy seeing you do it. And everybody else that is watching you, they are happy just looking at you, the way you do your job. I think it is Martin Luther King that says that, Martin Luther King Jr., that said that even if you are a street sweeper, sweep it in such a way like Michelangelo painted the masterpieces that he painted in and do it like the way Beethoven did his music. Do it in the best way that you will become the very best in that particular thing that you are doing. Do it with all your heart. Do it with all such greatness and such joy and happiness, such involvement that nobody will ever have anything to say against you. That is another form of obedience. Being obedient, not just to dragging your feet to just say, okay, Jesus told us a story about this. He told us a story about it and said the man had two sons, and he gave the first one the instruction, and the first one said, I'm going to do it. But it was being deceptive. His heart was not there. He was just trying to impress the father. He was just trying to do something with his mouth, but not with his mind. He was just saying, okay, I'll go and do it. But 1 day passed, 2 days passed, 3 days passed, and he never did it. He never went. Maybe he was still planning to do it, but it was too late. God did not commend that kind of person. Jesus, in that parable, condemned that brother. But then there was another brother that the father told to do the same thing, and he said, I will not do it. So he was sincere. But then eventually, he changed his mind, and I think he was touched and said, no, I will go and do it. So while the other one was still promising that he was going to do it, I never did anything. This other brother went and did what he needed to do. He did what he needed to do. And what does that mean? It's talking about, let your heart be, if you're saying you're not going to do it, be sincere about it. Whatever you're doing, make sure that you are doing it with all your heart. But when it comes to obedience, we want you to be, when you know that this thing is right, this thing is correct, this thing must be done, commit yourself to it and do it with joy. Don't do it with complaining. Do it with joy. Do it, and that's what God will commend. God commends this kind of obedience. Commend this kind of obedience. Now, there is another kind of obedience that I would like to mention. Is to obey with a humble heart. Obey, I would rather call it obey with service heart, with a steward attitude, the attitude of a steward. So when you are obeying, any instruction, but maybe it's from God or from you or from your superior, make sure you do it with an attitude of service, as a servant, as a steward. Jesus also spoke about this in the Bible. He said, he said there was a landowner, a farmer, that went to the farm together with one of his slaves, one of his servants, and they walked and came back. He said the servant will not come and say, okay, let me go and eat, and when I eat, I'll come and serve you. Even though he is also tired, just like the master is tired. But he will go and say, no, let me first of all feed you and serve you, my master, before I take care of myself. Why? Because he knows that he's under this authority. And he wants to show stewardship. That is an example of stewardship. And the same thing when in another parable, when God said he sent his servants and they were being beaten by the people he sent them to, and but they were not complaining. They just needed to obey. Their own position was to obey the instruction of their master. They needed to be a steward. The position of a servant and a slave and a steward at that particular time. So we too, we need to have that heart of a steward to be able to say, what I'm doing as to the Lord. I'm doing it the best I can do as for God, as to the Lord. I'm a servant here. That is, if, for example, if you're a pastor, you are not going to rule over people, command them and beat them around. No, have an attitude of a steward, of a servant. Jesus also said that, and he said, don't you look at my example. I didn't come to be served, but to serve people. And he also said, you too, you shouldn't. He said it's the people of the world that lord it over people, but you shouldn't lord it over people, and you shouldn't be waiting for people to serve you. Be a servant. He said, any one of you that wants to be the first should be the last. Every one of you that wants to be the greatest should be the least. So learn to be a servant. Have a servant heart. serve people in every capacity. Be humble enough to, you're obeying God anyway. And if you're obeying God, do it. Know that you are a servant. In everything you do, do it with an attitude of a servant, a service. So obey God with the attitude of a servant and act as a servant. Then that way you are not complaining. You are not expecting anything from anybody. If they give you anything, good for them. If they don't give you anything, good for them. You are good anyway. You are just happy to be able to obey your master and to be able to obey your heart and to be able to follow the instruction of your heart. So obedience is part of life. Life is all about obedience. It doesn't matter, even if you are the president of your country, you still need to obey your promises to your people. You still need to obey the people who elected you into that position. Life is about obedience. Learn to obey, learn to follow instructions, learn to obey the people, the injunctions, the inspirations, the ideas, and the commandments and the instructions that God gives you, that the Holy Spirit gives you, that you read in the Bible. Life is about obedience. Nobody can escape it. When we were younger, we used to think that when we grow up, we will not need to obey anymore, because obedience is only when you are young, you need to obey all the senior people, and when you are, when you grow up, then all that people have to obey you. You will not obey anybody. No, life is about obedience, and obedience is not just about obeying people. Obedience to instructions, obedience to ideas, obedience to everything, to things that you have learned. Life is about obedience, and the more obedient you are, the more you could be trusted with your own thing, the more you could be trusted with wealth and riches, the more you could be trusted with bigger things and bigger responsibility in life. Life is about obedience. If you want to live a high-yielding life, obedience is very important. But if you don't want a high-yielding life, you want a low-yielding life, then disregard obedience, and you will see that your life will be low, low, low. Your life will never be a high-yielding. It will be a low-yielding life. Well, I don't know if you have shared this message with your friends and family members. Please go and do it. Share. And if you have not yet, join our mentorship program, go to sundayadelajablog.com/mentorship. 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 Also, if you have not yet registered for the HMT, the next HMT coming up, write to hmt@godembassy.org. They will be able to give you all the information about the following HMT, the next HMT coming up. It's a life-changing experience. It might just be what you need. And for those of you who want your family members to receive and accept our WhatsApp, our messages on WhatsApp, maybe they don't have the data and they cannot watch all these 3 hours, 2 hours messages. We have short messages that we could be sending to them, and we commit to send to them every day, every single day. We'll be sending them different messages. Let them call to this number. Let them not call. Let them add this number to their WhatsApp contact list, or send us by message, SMS, or you could send us the SMS of all your friends, their telephone numbers, and we will add them to our line, and we'll begin to send messages to them on a daily basis. So thank you so much for everything. Thank you so much for being here today. Go share this message, and we'll be back tomorrow. Peace.
Діма Климашенко, вся слава Господу. І ваші оплески, воздайте славу Господу. Церква!